Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to another episode of Trudge Report. This is a recovery-based podcast, but don't worry. If you're not sober or not ready to be sober, we talk about plenty of other things, including sports, trending topics, and a good bit of nonsense. My name is Sean and I am your host. I'm joined by my good friends and fellow trudgers. Please remember to listen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Our videos will still be posted each week so you can watch episodes on YouTube and Facebook. But as always, please be sure to download on your listening platforms. Remember to like and subscribe on all social media outlets with the handle @Trudge Report Pod. We are brought to you by Stella Mix Podcast Management and our wonderful producer and editor, Miss Janine Stella. Gentlemen, good evening. Happy Memorial Day. First and foremost, let's take a quick moment to, in memory of all those who have fallen to serve this great country. And we'll go around. Greg, you're on my screen first. So how are you this evening, sir?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Had a nice long weekend, extended weekend. So that was nice. Spent most of it moving stuff. So I'm moving in with my girlfriend here. We're doing it kind of slow a little bit, but moving stuff over as we can. And it was cool. I've never made a move with somebody before where I haven't at some point during that move gotten super stressed out and yelled and screamed and profanity laden stuff coming out. So it was kind of cool. We didn't do any of that. We actually had quite a bit of fun doing it. So
dude, you helped me move years ago. You're saying you got stressed out?
Yeah, no. Actually, that was very. I was very green behind the ears at that time, so I was just kind of doing what I was told. But no,
and you got pizza that time too. So.
I did, and at that time, really, any time I can get pizza out of anything, I'll do it. So,
how much closet space did you get though, Greg? That's the real question.
Well, we're still working that out. But like I said, it was a good weekend, and definitely a good, I think, measuring stick for where you're at in a relationship if you can get through that stressful shit without getting at each other's throats and having a little bit of fun with it.
Nice, so. I like it. Good stuff. Corey, how was your weekend?
Fine. I am pissed off right now that I'm finding out about this, Greg, on a podcast. I mean, you literally went into another phase of your life with zero approval from me.
Well, if you were making the trip up here this upcoming weekend, like you had previously arranged, or if you just want to hop on a flight and come on up.
I'm gonna say it's the 26th, dude. I got plenty of time to book a flight.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm good, Sean. I saw that you went and saw Lilo and Stitch today. So did we.
It was fun.
So, yeah, it was great.
I cried like 3 times. I'm not even
That's
kidding.
Fucking ridiculous.
Come on. I'm not even kidding. It was so touching, man. It was good.
Yeah. It was fine.
I thought it was funny. I thought it had decent messaging and no weird stuff in it. You know what I mean?
There was weird stuff, but I won't talk about it online here. There was something. I know what you mean, and there is something weird about it.
Was there? So. I must have missed it.
Yeah,
I did fall asleep for 10 minutes too during the movie. Just throwing that out there.
I wish I had, but no, I'm fine, guys. We had Noah's birthday party and all that, and he's 4 now, so that sucks. But they just grow up so fast, dude.
That they do.
But no.
Did he absolutely wreck any of the other kids at all?
Not to my knowledge, and no child suffered from heat exhaustion here, so that's good.
That's good.
I will say at one point, Corey, I looked out the window and all 4 of the boys, 4 of them were in the little pool that you had, the kiddie pool, and they were just like body checking each other, dude. It was pretty funny.
Oops.
But they all seemed to love it. They were all like, ah.
Yeah, dude. They're boys. Of course they'll.
It was fun.
I gotta get waivers printed out,
Might be smart.
Yeah. So whatever.
Might be smart. It was a good party. I'll say that. We had fun.
Yeah. Had a good time.
Very good. Bill, how you doing, bud?
Doing good. 10 years of no illicit substances and 10 years since I moved to Florida today. So that's cool. It's a cool little marker.
Hey.
Also, recently went on my own, started my own business. So I don't know what a weekend is, but damn, it feels good. And working hard, boys. Just trying to better the community. That's all I can do.
There you go. Bettering the community through
Shameless plugs to come next
underground
week.
plumbing. Very good. Good stuff. Well, all good on my end. Hope everybody had a good Memorial Day today. And like I said, let's take just a quick moment to just shout out all the fallen that have served this great nation. We thank them for their service, and we have good memories, especially any family or friends that we have close to us and stuff. So I think that's important. Tonight, unless anybody else has anything, we will bring our guest right in. Her name is Maggie. Most of us are all pretty familiar with her. Corey, myself, and Bill know her very well. She's coming to us somewhat locally, and she'll get into all that. But if you're watching this, you'll see her screen turn on here in just a moment, our good friend Maggie. And then there she is. Hi, Maggie. How are you?
Hi, great.
Good stuff. We're happy that you are have graced us with your presence here on the Trudge Report.
I've been waiting a year.
She's been waiting. For all those, she's one of our most avid listeners, and we do definitely appreciate that. So, how are you tonight? Real quick, just starting off, how's everything going? How's your Memorial Day? What's going on?
Good. I got up and I climbed the dunes and a beach near me, and that's my workout like every other day, and I just connect with nature and the ocean. And then pretty much I did nothing the rest of the day. I was going to go into work and I decided not to, and it was great, peaceful.
Very cool. Do you have any specific dunes you go to, or just kind of whichever ones?
Over Jensen, mostly Jensen.
Nice. That's a good workout in the morning.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, like I said, I've known Maggie for, how long have you been in this area, Maggie?
Since 2014.
So I've known you since then. And I know Bill and Corey kind of met you either, maybe not quite around the same time. Corey, I don't think you were quite sober yet. And as Bill just said, he was just getting sober. But they met you a few years later. Greg, I don't know if you've ever officially met her. You probably have definitely run into her here and there.
Yeah, you have a very familiar face, but yeah. I don't know.
But so, like I said, I've known Maggie for a while. Maggie is a fellow lady in recovery around here, and we're going to get into all that. But she's got a really cool story. Big in the fashion industry in New York and Florida, and now around here. And I'll let her tell you more about that. But Maggie, we'll start it off right there, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you're from, kind of what brought you to Florida, and then kind of eventually, here on the Treasure Coast, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, I'm from Michigan originally, a small town called Plymouth, Michigan. My dad ran the steel division, basically a Ford Motor Company. My mom was a teacher, and that's pretty much everybody in Michigan at the time. That's your dad works for a car company, and your mom is basically a stay-at-home mom, usually. My mom was pretty much into working, but I grew up in like a very small town. Now I know that I was more on the privileged side, which I didn't know until I got in recovery. And I look back on, we would go to Hawaii when I was a kid where my relatives lived. And I thought everybody went to Oahu on spring break. And I was always in private school. And basically, I guess, like one of the first times I drank, I had a friend over from my private school, and I was 14 years old. My parents barely had anything in the liquor cabinet. They just weren't drinkers. And I just remember putting whiskey into my grandmother's teacups. They were like really special occasion teacups. And I put whiskey in them with this friend. And I just remember that feeling of it going down and how I started to feel. And I chased that feeling for 34 years. Like that feeling took me outside of myself because I never felt like I fit in. I kind of like, I had friends, but never anyone close, you know, and I was kind of bouncing from friendship to friendship. And I just felt lost as a kid. But when I started drinking, I didn't feel lost. I felt like everything was better. I felt invincible. So basically, that's my first time. And I moved I actually living in Plymouth. I went to high school. My sisters were basketball players and they needed some white kids in Detroit at the, they did. They used to pay, I think they used to pay the school to bring in, get some kids from the suburbs. And they were really good basketball players. And I had started at this all girls Catholic high school. And my parents were like, oh no, we're going to send you into Detroit and you're going to be going to this school. And there was like a race riot the first day.
Oh,
I got involved, right? It was like I got involved right away in cheerleading, competitive speaking, everything. I really loved high school. But my drinking, I was a binger. So I never drank every day, but I would drink on the weekends. And basically, I was like a kid with an adult head. So I could buy for everybody. I was buying for seniors, juniors, sophomores, and I was a freshman. So every weekend, I could not wait to go out. And it was like I didn't have the obsession during the week. Maybe I was too busy with sports, or I was doing track and cheerleading and all this other stuff. So I wasn't really thinking about it. So that's basically my high school years. And after high school, I ended up just moving to Chicago, which is definitely a party town. I worked at one of the top accounting firms in the world as a tax librarian. And within maybe a year or two, I was promoted to work for a head partner. And he was like a consultant to the department stores, sort of. And he used to get this paper called Women's Wear Daily. It's the Bible of the fashion industry. And I had always been like in sewing in high school, and I always had clothing like hanging up in the hall, featured. I always loved apparel, and I always knew I would be in the fashion industry. So I would look in the back of these classifieds in Women's Wear Daily, and I would see like, oh my gosh, like Ralph Lauren or Donna Karan. And I'd like actually call the company and I'd be like, is Ralph Lauren in? Is Donna Karan here? I didn't know that like these are people that are not coming to the phone, but I just really wanted to get in the industry. And I had an office with a view of Chicago. And I was looking out at the time, there was an apparel center there that was about 14 stories high. And I was like, I got to get to that building. And what I did, I just took my resume and walked that building until somebody hired me.
What was the first company you were hired by in the fashion industry?
It was a rep. So she had like 12 different companies. It was crazy because that's kind of what the reps did back then, is they would travel the Midwest with 12 different clothing lines and go and take all the samples to these little boutiques. So she had me be her road rep. So I was traveling like all the way over to Iowa, except I had a 2-seater car. I remember I was dating a guy at the time. I had to always use his car. And I mean, that's like, I don't know. It was like, that is like the beginning of alcoholism, because it's like, I knew was getting this job and I went and got a 2-seater car anyways, knowing that I would need like a van or an SUV, like just being a rebel. Right. So I ended up working with this woman, and then this other man hired me, and it was like Gerbeau leathers and Averex. It's when Top Gun came out. So the bomber jackets were
Sick.
crazy. Like, he was sending me to New York all the time. And I was actually going to New York, and, you know, in Chicago, I had some of my friends from, I kind of passed over college, but some of my friends that I went to college with that I would party with. And I ended up going to like 4 different colleges because I just couldn't stay. I just kept making geographical changes.
Did you ever end up graduating?
I never ended up graduating. I think I have like 20, maybe 25 credits to go to get my bachelor's, and my parents pushed it so hard that I wouldn't do it.
What were the colleges you
I started out at Ferris State University, which is in Michigan.
Okay.
Then I went to Eastern University in Ann Arbor near U of M. I went to Michigan State. That's where I was in fashion merchandising. That was a great party school.
Yeah.
And then I went to DePaul University in Chicago, theater costume design. So no, I never finished, but I did get all of my tailoring and sewing classes and merchandising. So
you've been in that industry your entire life since then, though, right?
yeah.
Like
you'd be happy to know, Maggie, that Averex is officially back in style at the moment, just like as of the last couple months. So
what are they, Bill?
Averex is like leather jackets.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I have a
big
leather
in
jacket.
the rap scene. Yeah, I could see you in an Averex.
I have a leather jacket I get to wear once a year, just about.
And some Jabot jeans. I could see you in some Jabot jeans too.
I don't know what that is.
Marie Francoise Jabot.
I don't own a pair of jeans.
80s.
No, it was big in so I worked at a clothing boutique in Pittsburgh from 2002 to 2006, and probably was either in the same supply line in the Midwest, and we carried Jabot, Averex, Academics, Miskeen, all those boutique items, and it was a lot of fun.
You probably wreaked havoc on that industry, Bill.
I had ulterior motives. I would say I was not. My eyes were not on the fashion industry.
I bet. So Maggie, go ahead and continue on. Like, what was the experience like working in high fashion or I guess tell us how you ended up in New York City, and then talk a little bit about that. How was the experience in high fashion in New York City?
Basically, when I was working for this man, he would send me to New York to go to the fashion shows, and all the fashion shows were in the Plaza Hotel. So all the designers would rent a room and show their collections. So he sent me there it was like a very high-end shirt line. I think it was a Japanese shirt line. And I was basically like his sub rep. So, I went out in the hallway and asked a guy for a light and ended up marrying that guy. He was a fabric designer. So that's kind of how I got to New York, is that I met this man and married him. And at the time, he was a fabric designer. And then when we got married, he worked for a company. I don't want to say their name, but it was a very high-end designer, kind of a Western belt company. It was hot at the time. So I actually got a job right after we got married with a famous designer. And I learned everything about fashion working for this company. It was a multi-million-dollar company. It was like the hottest company on the cover of Women's Wear Daily. They did women's dresses and suits. And that's where I learned everything. But I always knew that I was going to open my own business. So, and throughout this time, like, to get back to my recovery portion, like, I am a binge drinker. So the whole time I was drinking, I just kept it under wraps. I was able to keep it under wraps. And going into fashion, there were a lot of parties, a lot of dinners, and I always hit it really well. And I worked with this designer who became my best friend, who's still a very dear best friend to this day. And when I got sober, basically, I was telling her I was 9 months sober. I know I'm jumping forward, but I called her and I'm like, hey, I'm coming to New York for a show. And I just have to let you know that I got sober and I'm 9 months sober. And she's like, Maggie, I always suspected you were so weird about drinks when we go out to dinner. Like you would have one and only one. And then you would talk about it. She's like, Maggie, I'm getting a 20-year medallion next week. Like I had no idea that she was even in a program, right? So I married this man. I work for this company. I opened up my own company. I just literally went to this boutique building. I knew it was the next hottest building and signed a lease. And I was going to be like a dress showroom in New York, like the only dress showroom in New York. But somehow I evolved into this lifestyle clothing, which was, I called it carpool couture because it was just like elastic waistbands and, just not anything that I would really wear. And I know I was telling Sean the other night about like, I would go to the plaza and have fashion shows there. And I would literally, my business became so big that I would take up an entire hallway of different designers. And that's how I would find my designers too, is going to these fashion shows. But of course, when I'm at these fashion shows, I'm away, staying in the room for the night and drinking. And one time I had, Saks Fifth Avenue, their head fashion office. I tried to get an appointment with them forever, and they just showed up. And I'm in a dress inside out and backwards because I'm still drunk from the night before. And
you're setting a new trend. It's okay.
Oh yeah, right. With the tag hanging and, just that's the kind of things that would happen to me. And I think because I was married, I was keeping it under wraps and, really focused on my business. So I would only drink like if we were going out to dinner, but it wouldn't get out of control. I did have a woman who is a Chanel model who worked for me. And when my husband would go out of town traveling, he's like, don't go up to Harlem. I don't want you to go see your friend. And I would go up to Harlem and drink with her. And, everything he told me to do, I would do the opposite. And anyway.
Now, let me hold on real quick. Let me ask a recovery question, because I know you're an alcoholic, right? I would imagine though that in the high fashion scene of New York City, there may have been some extracurricular activities in terms of other substances. Did you ever get involved with anything like that?
I never did. I'm a alcoholic. Even when I went to outpatient, which is where I got better, I was in with everyone else, but I was the only alcoholic, and maybe one older guy, and everybody else was other substances. But the more that I went to this program, I would say to them, if Merlot was in a needle, I would do it.
Yeah.
Because that's how much I wanted it.
I'd imagine that at some of these parties, there's a lot of crack. I don't know why. I hope there was at least.
Well, I mean, if
cocaine probably.
At the 80s, it's late 80s, early 90s. It's cocaine. Cocaine was everywhere,
And you gotta smoke it. I mean, I don't know.
Oh my God, I was oblivious to everything because I was drinking and self-absorbed. So I didn't even know anything going on around me because it was really about me and my business. So.
So I may have missed it, but did you end up getting sober in New York, or were you already?
No, I moved here. So my business became so successful. We got a house out in Connecticut. Keith Richards was one of my neighbors.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And
Nice.
my husband, he ended up joining the business with me, and we worked great together. We were great working together. It was a really powerful thing for us to work together, but we couldn't be married. But I'll get into that. We were living in Connecticut, and I got snowed in with our dog for like 2 weeks into our house because we were living in the woods on like 6 acres. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. Originally we had moved in New York City in the Corinthian building, which is the only round building on the Midtown Tunnel. And I wasn't happy there because of no matter where we lived, I wasn't happy. I mean, I didn't know I was an alcoholic because I didn't drink every day. So after that snowstorm, I just said to my husband, I want to move to Florida and I'll keep my business. I knew that I could keep my business going because the business basically, I only had to be in New York once a month for what's called market weeks. That's when all the buyers come from all over the country and they come to your showroom in New York. And what happened was the largest showroom in New York put my name on the door and gave me kind of an office situation. So we moved to Florida, and this was 1999. And we had already been married for about 10 years. And we moved, and within the first month, I got pregnant, which I was in shock because I had not ever gotten pregnant. So I had this baby, and I remember thinking, God, I cannot wait to drink, because I wasn't drinking during this pregnancy, but I could not wait to just have a drink after this kid was born. And I remember my husband and I decided, I was going to breastfeed. So I'm like, damn, I can't drink. Well, my daughter was allergic to my breast milk, and it was like within 48 hours of having her, I was drinking.
Real quick then. So, because I think this is important. I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot from female alcoholics that they don't drink during their pregnancy, and you hear it a lot. And then they obviously they're alcoholics, so they go back to it. Was it really difficult not to drink during the pregnancy, or was it kind of like almost like that's such a strong enough reason? It's almost like out of sight, out of mind. But the moment, like you said, you couldn't wait to do it. Like, what was that? Was that hard to do?
It was hard to do because I thought of it because we had moved to Florida and we were going to outdoor restaurants all the time. And we had friends that lived down here. So we were meeting them and everybody was drinking and I couldn't. But it was very difficult. Yeah. It was difficult. I think I may have had like half a glass of wine, if even that.
Yeah.
But I think that in my mind, I was more worried about this baby than anything else. It was really later on after I had my daughter that my drinking took off a little bit more. And so she was born, and basically the day after she was born, I was working on like this multi-million-dollar deal with Dillard's because I was running the company still and I had to do it. And I remember like looking at her and I'm like, God, she's yellow. And my husband, he's like, I'm taking her back to the hospital. And I was sitting writing an order. I didn't even go to the hospital. Like I couldn't. It was like, that's what supported us.
Wow.
And I remember thinking back, like, why would I not have gone? I was so like, but I also had just given birth. So your hormones, you're crazy, right? You're not even thinking straight because.
So do you think that some of that is though, like the scene, like, cause I've been in some of those circles and sometimes I'm like, man, I really like enjoy living out in the country a little bit more because it's almost like when people get so entrenched in those cities, like they become so like, yeah, I got to do business over, take care of my sick child, or, like, do you think that's more relative to a scene thing or a mentality thing? How do you look at that?
I think it is more of a scene thing, and just living that lifestyle.
Like that fast life, and you got to keep it moving. Yeah.
Keep it moving. And also I glamorize drinking, because in New York, I wasn't just going to the corner bar. I was going to the Four Seasons or the Plaza.
You definitely could too if your husband was stuck
places
in the
that Corey wouldn't be allowed in.
If your husband was stuck in the hospital, you definitely could have went to the Four Seasons, because now you're good to go.
So we were in Boca at this time when she was born. She was born in Florida. So I was definitely still caught up in that fashion, fast life. I got to get moving, right? I mean, I just could not wait to have that baby and get back to my business and my life. But that doesn't happen that way when you have a kid, because all of a sudden you're changing diapers. And, I pretty soon after that hired a nanny. I remember I hired a chef. I just hired people so that it would make my life easier, so I could do my thing too. Yeah. Not that I didn't spend time with my daughter. I love being a mom. It was like the most amazing thing that could have ever happened to me. So I started, I kept my business going, and then I went up to New York for the fashion show, September 10th. And this was 2001, so the day before September 11. And that day I was voted one of the top 10 women in the fashion industry.
Very cool.
And I was I had designed a packable, wearable little box with the Statue of Liberty on it called Maggie York, New York, which was the name of my company and my name. And I was introducing it to QVC, and they offered me a 1-hour show. And that was on Monday. And I had I had an appointment with every department store in the country that week. So I was at the absolute height of my success. And the next morning I was in a meeting with the vice president of Dillard. She's like, my husband just texted me and a plane hit one of the towers. And at the time, everybody thought it was like a little propeller plane or whatever, We didn't know until 8:30, I believe it was 8:30, when a second plane hit. And I was on Broadway. So I was able to walk outside of my building and see there was just dust all the whole end of the city. And I remember that night I was in this showroom, the big showroom I was talking about. And I just remember that somebody had called and got a liquor delivery. Somehow they got a liquor delivery in the showroom. And I'm like, wow. And we were just talking about, I was the only one who had a phone that worked because I had T-Mobile at the time. All the towers were knocked down because they were on top of the World Trade Center. So I was getting calls from China, from everywhere. And at the time, my parents, they were here in where we live. And I remember my dad calling, and he's like, I got the baby, I got your Jeep, and I'm coming in. Wow. And I'm like, Dad, you can't get into New York City. He goes, I'm coming to get you. My parents were so worried about me and my husband, and he ended up getting me a train ticket out of New York, but not until that Friday. And I remember that day drinking that night, and I was getting super frustrated with the wait staff, which they only had like 2 people, like they weren't bringing me my drinks fast enough. Because I'm here, I'm in New York City, I'm away from my husband. I would not necessarily drink around him. And I remember just getting crazy, like I've got to have drinks. And I made it home. I took a bus. My husband got the last ticket out of Penn Station, leaving New York to go to Florida. And my parents met me in Orlando with my baby. She was a year and a half old, and I was just so happy to see her. I just remember that moment of because I didn't think I was going to make it out. We didn't know if more planes were going to hit, what was happening. So I got back to Florida, and about 3 months later, my husband, at the time, he would always put coffee on the nightstand for me. And that's how I would wake up in the morning. And I went to reach for the coffee, and I could barely hold the cup. I was shaking.
Oh.
And I went to my doctor, and he's like, I think you have post-traumatic stress. So I did go on some tranquilizers. I was on those for a few years, but this is very funny, but I wouldn't drink with them. So I would be not drinking and taking a lot of these tranquilizers and running my business, raising my daughter. I think I was on them for a good 2 to 3 years. But I never went to therapy. I wish I would have. I should have, because, I did smell burning bodies downtown. I mean, it was just a very distinct smell because I was staying downtown. So I had to wait 2 days just to go past barricades to get to my luggage and my friend. So
Jesus.
I know, but I was in the fashion industry. I didn't have to worry about luggage because everything was hanging in the showroom. I could just take outfits from there, which that was the beauty of going to New York, is that I really didn't have to pack a suitcase. So I got back to Florida, and I think my drinking really took off after that because I divorced my husband. I asked him for a divorce. He said yes. I was kind of shocked, actually. I'm like, oh my God, he's saying yes. Like maybe in the back of my mind, I was just playing a game and being manipulative, like to see what he would say. So we did end up getting divorced, and now I'm a single mom, and I had lost probably half my business after 9/11. So we had a house in Boca. I had a pool. I mean, beautiful home. I was like, how am I going to do all this? When, I made enough to keep everything going and get a nanny and keep her. And by this time she was like 3, and I put her in a private preschool. But there were a lot of nights I paid the nanny to take her so I could go out drinking. Yeah. And oh my gosh, and I had this nanny from Colombia. She spoke no English, but somehow we would have these entire conversations. And my daughter was starting to speak Spanish. And at the time, VHSs were a big thing. And I would put like Barney or the Teletubbies in on VHS. And she would say to me, Mommy, rewind the video to the beginning, please. Like, because she was learning Spanish and not English instead. Wow. So it was kind of funny. But anyways, so I'm single, and I am starting to go out, and I ended up going even to this Landmark, which is kind of a self-help.
My mom did that. My mom has led Landmark, and it used to be called SELP. She's done that for her entire life. I did the forum as a kid. I did the young people's forum when I was a kid.
It's so cool. That was kind of the start of a journey for me of self-discovery. But I didn't stop drinking. I was still going out. And I don't know, somehow I met this woman at Landmark who had 30 years of recovery. And she goes, I want you to come to this meeting in Pompano at the 101 Club. She said, I'm getting a 30-year medallion. I'm like, all right. I hit it off with this woman. I just loved her. There was something about her. And I went, and I actually picked up a white chip at this meeting. And got our literature, and then I think I went to one other meeting, but I never even thought. She was like, I said to her, I might have a problem with alcohol, but I don't drink all the time. She goes, well, you'll know. And she's like, you'll know when you'll know, right? And so I did get into 6 years after 9/11. I was in Boca, and my daughter was in preschool, and I had a bunch of moms I hung out with, and one of the moms was murdered at Town Center Mall, and that was the catalyst for getting me better. And my daughter lost her best friend. I called my friend. I had gone out one night, and it was a crazy night, and I just said, I've got a problem. And she's like, you know what? You can go to this outpatient thing. And I went to outpatient and found out that I was an alcoholic, and I loved it. I dove right in. I did everything they told me to do, and I'm still doing the same thing since then.
What would you say the most important thing in your, like the thing that you lean on the most in your sobriety? What would you consider that? Or one of the things you lean on the most?
One of the things is definitely my mentor. And I've always had a mentor, and I've always mentored women, always, from the very beginning. And my very first mentor told me, I want you to be quiet for the first year, shut your mouth, and I want you to listen. And I want you to go to meetings. And she kept me busy picking up women at detoxes and, you know, taking them to meetings. And basically, she kept me so busy. And she would say, I'll pick up your daughter from school. And somehow I did all this, raising my daughter, having her in school, me working at home. And I just did it. And the most meaningful thing was the relationships around me, and that I can't do it alone. And I keep a consistency about it. So I got sober January 25th of 2008.
Very cool.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
One of the things that has always fascinated me about your story is well, I mean, I'm probably everybody is that, like, you were in that mysterious city, New York City, and like to me New York has always been like a very like majestic and like, I don't know what the right word to describe it. Just mysterious. I don't know. Like, it's got a lot of mystique, like in my mind anyway. I know Philadelphia very well. I can figure that place out. But New York is huge, right? And there's so much culture and just craziness and all and whatever. And I've only been able to visit there a couple times. I guess I want to know. So, do you have any type of recovery community up there? Being that you like traveled back and forth, I think, after you got sober, is what you're saying?
Yes. So, yes, I do. My best friend, who was a designer in my showroom when I first started out, had a town, she had like a condo in the Village. So when I would fly into New York to do shows and work, I would stay with her, and we would go to meetings like Perry Street, or, you know, at noon, she would go to work because she's a fashion designer. And I would go to like the NYU meetings. There's a great meeting there at noon, and there's like a ton of like script writers, and I met TV producers at those meetings. So, yeah, it was really cool.
So so I have a follow-up question. I've been to not a lot of places, but I've been fortunate enough to be at a few places and visit several different like recovery communities around the country. And almost all of them kind of suck in comparison to what we have here. Do you agree or disagree? like the Treasure Coast of Florida, I think has a
Right.
really good recovery community. I'm like ostracizing the rest of them, but I don't care. What do you think?
I think equal, only
Yeah.
because I got sober in Boca. I'm equal on all of the recovery communities, only because I've been around for 17 years now.
Right.
So I've experienced a lot of different places, and I'm there for the message. So I thought when I was living in Boca, before I moved up here in 2014, that I would just be lost without my Boca recovery. And it's funny because my mentor now is my best friend from Boca. And her husband watched our kids so we could go to a women's meeting, and she would buy him a gallon of rum and take the keys. So he watched all the kids so we could get sober. But he is 12 or 13 years sober now. And my recovery here on the Treasure Coast, I absolutely love. I go to a meeting every other day, which is crazy. I spent 2014 to 2023. I moved here to take care of my parents, which I said in Boca I would never do. I go, I'm not that woman. I'll never take care of my parents. And that's basically why I moved here. And I took care of them until they passed. And my daughter was going into high school.
Let me ask you a question. So from our standpoint, we're all four men. So we would probably like to get a woman's perspective on what you think as a woman in recovery, what the specific challenges were, at the gateway point, the inflection point of actually coming into recovery, maybe a long-term outlook on what that is, and maybe something that could be helpful to any other women that are maybe trying to navigate that problem today.
I found that when I first came in, I thought, how am I ever going to make a meeting? Because I have a child. I'm a single mom. And how am I going to do it? How could I possibly do it? And somehow I got a mentor. I went through the work and started to mentor other women. And all of a sudden I would meet women that were babysitters or nannies. I actually hired one of the women that I was mentoring, and she was like a nanny for me. But I had a lot of different women help me. We just pitched in recovery. The women pitched in, and the women that had husbands and kids would help me out, and I would ask for help. I had
to find the leaders, the women, like the women groups, and find the leaders, and then build your own community.
That's exactly what I did. Is I went to women's meetings, and that's how I met women in recovery. That we helped each other out. I would take their kids.
You say you were mentoring these people and then hiring them, but we're not saying like let's go find guys and help them and then hire them. We're saying that if it works, it works.
I didn't look out for them.
Right.
It just happened that way. It was
exactly
right. It was like a God thing, actually. So we were all helping each other. And what was nice is that my daughter I was mentoring a woman who had a daughter who was my daughter's age. And we introduced them to each other, and they became very friendly. And we took them to meetings. And I remember one time we're in a church and we hear this crazy screaming in the vestibule in the back of the church. And we're in the meeting, and basically the kids are like goofing around, and we had to like stop and go get them because they were having so much fun. So my daughter have friends in recovery, right? I was the recovering one. And it just happened. It was like a God thing where
it's funny because it mirrors our story, which is the story of recovery. Because if you look at it at the surface, Greg lives in Cleveland. We've known each other all about 10 years, but really, I mean, I only see these guys maybe once a month, but every time we talk, it's like we have that, the feeling of a sinking ship, right? As they say in literature, where we have that camaraderie no matter what. And it's funny that principles like that, aka God's principles, always work the same way throughout the different stories. The names change, but the same interwebbings of that story work because, like you said, when you jump in and you just throw it all in there, it all seems to connect on the time that it needs to connect. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I like that. That's exactly how it is. It just happens. I just had faith that everything would fall together. And what I love now is my daughter's 25 now, and conversations with her. And she called me last week, and she had moved to Fort Lauderdale in January. And she was like, Mom, I don't want to sound ungrateful, but I'm not, I don't like it here yet. I told her, like, just, you're going to get settled. But our conversations are kind of recovery conversations, and we can talk about God. And I tell her about my recovery. She's lived around it. And when she was little,
would you say you're, I mean, like, I know when your child is small, there's that innate nurturing connection, but would you say you're closer now to her? Are you closer to her now than ever? Yeah, because you're kind of, intertwined on a spiritual level, right?
Yeah, definitely closer now than ever. When she was little, she's like, Mommy,
it was in there already. It's already been baked in, basically. Residually through like being around the program, basically.
And I would do book studies at my house, and she's like, "Are the book ladies coming?" Because she knew they bring snacks too. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And at Christmas, she gave me a box of inspirational cards, and she wrote on it, I love you, Mom. This is for you to inspire others. Like, she knows that my purpose is helping others.
And one more thing that comes to mind, because everyone here has kids in one form or another. And it's the same way. We're glad our kids are around this. There is that back of the mind fear with this kind of thing, because it can be a genetic thing,
Right.
I mean, my daughter's relationship with God is strong, but obviously. So, and to me, I look at it because I know other people's parents call me, hey, my son is struggling, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I tell them easily, don't fall for it, cut them off, right? But then I think, what if that was me and my kid? So I guess the question is, did you ever, you don't have to disclose or get into this really if you don't want, but the question is, did you ever get to that point where you had to just, like my family told me, they were just prepared to bury me at a point, like, don't even talk to me. And stonewalling the relationship, right? So that's scary, and then she makes it through it, and that's fantastic,
Right.
That's the only thing we can do in that scenario, but
and
it's so scary when it's your kid.
Her life and her spirituality, I just listen to her. And as far as her sobriety, I don't ask about it because it's none of my business. That's between her and God, I feel. So that's not something we really ever discuss. We just, I don't know, we're so tight now, and I love it. I love that we can talk really about anything.
What was it like at that time when she was struggling really bad? Or like, what were
she in high school, she struggled. And after high school, there was a period of time where we didn't speak for 3 years.
Okay.
And we didn't speak until my mother passed. My mom was in assisted living, dying. And, I was going in, and the nurses are like, oh, I was chasing them down to get her meds. And one of them said, oh, your daughter's just like you. And I'm like, my daughter? Wow. My daughter was there every day. And
got the goosebumps on that one. That's a crazy, powerful way to be reconnected.
She was laying in bed with my mom, until she died. Like, we were there until, like, not until the very end, because I really, at that time, I didn't want my daughter. She's young. I didn't want her to have to be there when my mom actually passed. And I remember my sister and I talking to her, and we're like, you know what? It's going to be a matter of hours. And why don't you go home and rest? Because my mom,
plus the part though that became the soil that reintegrated your roots with her again,
yes,
and the tragic loss becoming infinite gain, all
right.
is
And
extremely
I
powerful.
wasn't actually like close to my mother. My daughter was closer to my mother than I was. So
yeah,
that was my mother's dying wish too, is that we get back together. And
beautiful.
we've been ever since.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Maggie, we're about out of time. Is there does any of the other guys have any other last minute questions? Or Maggie, is there anything you want to anything that you definitely wanted to get to? We still have a few more minutes.
Just that in recovery, it's about consistency. It's about consistency, and it's about responsibility, really, and being responsible for the people that you're helping out, and being responsible for leading them hopefully to God. And that's basically it.
My mentor told me a long time ago, said, make your daily routine practicable, repeatable, and sustainable. And those three things have always stuck with me. So Maggie, we can't thank you enough. You have an electric personality and a fascinating story. It's been great knowing you these past, 10 plus years. And
I feel the same.
You and I have had many talks about your daughter. My mother too took the door off the hinges of my bedroom, as you did, I'm sure, that you told that story one. Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah.
Sean, can we end with one specific question real quick?
Sure.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
So, out of curiosity, Maggie, if you were to have a favorite member of the Trudge Report, you don't have to say who it is, but would you agree that it's not Greg, Bill, or Sean? I mean,
I have to say,
again,
you've been my favorite all along. I do.
It's
I'm
clearly
sorry.
Janine.
yeah.
Now I love you equally. Okay, all of you.
Damn.
Now you can have him. He needs to have at least one fan.
Yeah, I need some backup on here.
I'm definitely your biggest fan.
I need some support over here. Well, they gang up on me constantly.
I know. That's why I'm your fan. I feel bad.
I know.
I'm a pity fan.
Yeah. That checks out. That's the story of my life right there.
I love you.
Maggie, I can honestly say you are a powerful, powerful example, not just of female sobriety, but just of sobriety in general. And our community here is very fortunate to have you. No disrespect to Boca or New York, but we're glad we have you here on the Treasure Coast. So
thank you.
Want to thank you again, Maggie. That was an awesome episode, awesome story, awesome experience, strength, and hope. So,
and happy birthday, Noah. I didn't get to say, we didn't say that at the beginning, I don't think very much, all of us, but
I barely mentioned it.
Corey's little man.
He got
Corey's
enough
little
attention.
man turned 4.
Yep.
So we'll have you on again sometime in the future, and we'll dig a little deeper into some of this stuff. And best of luck with just everything, but also with your relationship with your daughter, the growing relationship. So
thank you.
Very cool. All right, boys and girls. Shout out to our listeners. Please like, share, subscribe on all social media outlets with the handle @TrudgeReportPod. You can email us, trudgereportpod@yahoo.com. Send mailbag requests for topics, questions, and comments to any of these handles. Or if you just want to bitch at Corey, you can DM him directly. Remember, we are all here if anyone wants to talk about recovery and our experiences, or if you are struggling with some form of addiction. Thank you again to Janine and Stella Mix Podcast Management. Good night, God bless, and may you trudge the road of happy destiny. We'll see you next week. Cheers.